Okay, this video is on the advice and consent of the Senate, one of the big powers given to the legislative branch, but more particularly the Senate. The House doesn't really have this power. It's something called advice and consent. And this simply means they're there to ratify or approve something. The Senate's the only one that has the power of advice and consent. We talked about it early in the year with treaties. The president's the one that's going to go out and negotiate a treaty with another country. When he does that, he has to bring it home, present it to the Senate, and 2/3 of those senators have to approve it. If he doesn't, or if they don't give that advice and consent, then the treaty is no good. It's not worth anything. So he needs to get 2/3 of the Senate. Most of the time, like we mentioned, 2/3 of the Senate isn't going to be one political party, which means it has to be agreeable to really both sides. Treaties are a little more difficult to get approved. That's why, like I mentioned before, executive agreements are very simple, just agreements between the president and the head of another country. They can bypass the Senate. Again, executive agreements aren't in the Constitution, treaties are. The reason that the framers of the Constitution set up like this is they wanted that check and balance. Executive agreements obviously don't have that check and balance. So the Senate's not extremely happy every time the president makes an executive agreement, as opposed to a treaty where they could weigh in and give some say. Advice and consent also occurs when the president picks, let me move my face, approves ambassadors. So ambassadors to other countries. So if I pick Austin as my ambassador to Canada and the other Austin as my ambassador to Australia, I have to have them approved by the Senate to do that. The Senate also, under the advice and consent, has to approve cabinet secretaries. As we mentioned, cabinet secretaries, by and large, are approved as our ambassadors as the president wishes. Unless there is a glaring weakness within that person, and usually it's a personal thing, like if I'm appointed and you realize in my past that I'm like, I've been accused of treason multiple times, or I've taken bribes from the mafia multiple times, or I've mafia ties or something. I'm stuck on the mafia thing. If that's in my background, then yeah, I guess they would disagree. Usually cabinet secretaries are not turned away because of their beliefs. Quite simply, again, if President Trump nominates somebody to be the Secretary of State and the Democrats are like, oh, I don't like that person, they know full well that you turn that one down and the next one is going to look exactly like the one they just turned down. So they kind of know that's the case. The other thing is they do want to give kind of the president the tools to be successful in the long run. That doesn't mean they're not going to give that person a hard time. They clearly will. The other advice and consent that we can talk about is approving federal judges and Supreme Court justices. These do get turned down at a little greater rate. And there's one glaring reason why. It's because those federal judges and those Supreme Court justices are there for life. So where the Secretary of State, you can roll the dice saying he might only be there for a year or two. A federal judge could be there for 40, 50, depending how old that person is. If you nominate them when they're 35, they might be there till they're 80. So you could be dealing with that person for quite a long time. We kind of talked about the Reagan years. He nominated a lot of really young federal judges that are just starting to kind of hang it up. But, they've been there for a long, long, long time. Like I said, President Reagan's been gone for a while, not only out of office, but he's been dead for quite a while. So, he's still having some effect based on the judges that he nominated. So the idea of advice and consent is one taken pretty seriously by the Senate. It's a pretty powerful power that the Senate has. So if you have any questions on that, please let me know. I'm sure I'm going to be back with another video pretty soon. So I will see you then.